pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have a roll call. David Bove here, Eric Bosler, Geraldine Diesel,
Here.
James Kirshner, here. Martha Riesinger, Richard Rudloff, here. Terrence McDaniel,
Here.
All present and accounted for. Next, we have the Board of Education norms. I haven't read those in a while. I'm going to go over them. Decision making, focus on the best interest of students while ensuring that decisions are financially responsible, take into account current data, consider the impact on staff, and align with our mission of working together to create success at St. Genevieve R2 and beyond. Preparation and effective use of time. Come prepared for Board of Education meetings by reading the board packets prior to Board of Education meetings and proactively asking questions to allow time for answers to be collected or researched and then shared at the meeting. Cohesion. Speak with one voice. After deliberation and consensus on a subject, move forward together as a collective board while supporting the decision in words and actions privately and publicly. Do not speak on behalf of the board without written authorization from the board. Representation. Act as an ambassador for the St. Genevieve R2 School District by consistently advocating for public education and staying up to date on happenings and initiatives within and around the school district. And lastly, behavior and interactions. Listen to understand and communicate to explain. Respect and value the diverse perspectives, opinions, and contributions of all district stakeholders, including fellow board members, students and their families, employees, patrons, and community members. Be open-minded and engage in active listening while being aware of nonverbal behaviors as well. Encourage open and honest communication on a consistent and continuous basis, and nurture a spirit of harmony, cooperation, respect, and connectedness. Next, we have approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda of the January 18, 2022 regular open session meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public participation. Board members and administrators will listen to concerns and will respond when appropriate by mail or telephone at a later date. Per policy BDDH-1, public participation at board meetings, the following guidelines and procedures will be followed. In order to speak during public participation, a public comment form must be filled out and submitted to the board president prior to the beginning of the meeting. The public comment period will not exceed 15 minutes. No individual will be permitted to speak more than once, and each speaker will be allotted no more than 5 minutes. I do not have any public participation. Next, we have a report of the superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening.
evening.
In your board packet, as always, the first item is our notes of appreciation section. The second item on my report, hang on, I'm using the wrong computer. There you go. It's to talk about the annual school board election. The election will take place on Tuesday, April 5th. Filing opened on Tuesday, December 7th at 8 a.m. It closed, actually that should say Tuesday, December 28th. That was a long time ago, it's not today. And we actually have 6 candidates running, and this is how the order that they will appear in on the ballot. First, we have Jamie Nagger-Ballou, who is in attendance at the board meeting tonight. Next, we have Michael Stoll, Larry Foff, Joshua Gettinger, and Josh is also here tonight in attendance. Samuel Barbagalo. Okay, we will check on that. I know I've been told how to say it, and I always mess it up. And the last candidate is Brad Arnold. So I just encourage everyone to get out and vote on April 5th. And as we discussed and the board approved last month, we also have Proposition SG on that ballot also. So please try to remember to vote on April 5th. The next item on my report is to talk about the pre-K and kindergarten registrations again. St. Genevieve Elementary will hold their event on Saturday, March 19th from 8 to 2. Bloomsdale will hold theirs on Saturday, April 2nd from 8 to 1, and we will begin scheduling on Tuesday, February 22nd. We encourage all parents who have a child entering kindergarten or who is preschool age who would like to have their child screened, please give us a call. If these times don't work for you, we'll work with you. We just need to help you out in any way we can. The next item on my report is actually Dr. Taylor's. He's going to review standardized test scores.
Good evening, everyone.
me
This
get
should be
you-
quite the adventure. I've been working on this for probably close to 2 weeks in an attempt to make it coherent, given our current environment that we're in, and where we stand with our APR, which we didn't have testing for a year, so an APR wasn't created. And then we conducted testing last year to gather data, but once again, the state of Missouri is not using that data for state or federal accountability purposes. It's just a baseline for us to see where our students are, how the pandemic has impacted them educationally. So I'm going to attempt to cover a couple items and then talk about MSIP 5, MSIP 6, APR, where we're headed, items like that. If you have questions, please let me know as we go through. We're going to start with something easy, ACT test data from 2016 to 2021. You can see, starting in 2016, I think that was the first year the Board of Education approved all students to take the test here at St. Genevieve R2. We continue to offer that to students, working with Russ Toombs, the high school guidance counselor, Dr. Boyd. We're trying to determine a better path. Is it the most appropriate to force every student to take the ACT, even if they are going into a career field? If they're going into career and technical education, if they're going to work? The answer to that question was no, it's not appropriate. We need to find another way to assess those students. So that's a work in progress. You'll notice from 2020 to 2021, we went from 129 students down to 65. And that's the reason why we're trying to find another avenue for those students who aren't college bound and don't need the ACT. In addition to that, some colleges aren't even requiring the ACT as an entrance exam anymore. So that is a work in progress. You will see that our score went up because we're not forcing everybody to take it. We went up from 19.2 to a 20.9, which is just above the state average. So that's our ACT test data from last year. So now there are going to be a bunch of graphs. I'm just going to warn you up front. I took a lesson from a college professor I had, and I'm trying to reduce the amount of data I have on one screen so it's not too complicated. I don't think I did a good job in the COVID graphs. I think I threw a bunch of data up there and it was a little confusing. So I'm trying to reduce the amount of data that I have on a slide. So this is simply grade 3 ELA test results. In red you have the state. Our district is in dark green. Bloomsdale is in light green, and then SGE is in mint. I don't know what color you would call that. We'll go with mint. You can see that the state average was 300.8. And just to review, these are all MPI scores. When a student scores below basic on the MAP test, they are awarded a point. When they score basic, they are awarded 3 points. And that was thought to be an incentive for moving students from below basic to basic. When they score proficient, they score 4 points, and when they score advanced, they score 5 points. All of those points are added together and then divided by the number of students that took the test to come up with an MPI score. And MPI stands for MAP Performance Index. So you can see, as a district in both buildings, we're above state average. I also want to preface this before we continue. Our district has traditionally performed very, very well on the state assessment. We are traditionally 20, 30, sometimes 40 points above the state average. That's not the case. We do have some instances of scoring significantly above the state average, but being shut down in March and no education going on, to transitioning back to a virtual or a blended environment, and then finally getting our students back on campus, that has impacted every school district probably across the nation, and we are not exempt from that. So keep in mind as we go through these scores, that plays a huge factor in where we are educationally. So you can see we're doing pretty well. 348.1, we are, I've got the specifics, 47 points higher than the state average. We're going to move on to fourth grade. State average is 343.1, and we're at 355.5, about 12.4 points higher. Fifth grade, 326.9. Our district is 339.5. And I'm going to focus on the district scores because the district has both Bloomsdale and St. Genevieve Elementary combined. But you can see in most of these slides, they're very, very similar. Moving on to middle school English language arts, 329 was the state average. We're at 338.7. That's 9.7 points higher. At grade 7, we're 9.3 points higher than the state average. Grade 8, big jump, 39.5 points higher than the state average. And then at the high school, the end of course exam in English 2, we are 24.8 points higher than the state average. So overall, English language arts, not as stellar as we normally do, but still holding our own in a pandemic. So we're going to move on to mathematics. We're going to start at grade 3 again. You can see the state average is 286.4. This is where I would struggle if I didn't have to come to school and do math every day. This is where you would see it in my grades. That's a difficult concept to learn virtually or blended. So we're doing pretty well here at the third grade level. As a district, we're 61.7 points higher than the state average. Grade 4, 46.2 points higher. Grade 5, 48.5 points higher than the state average. Grade 6 at the middle school is 43.4 points higher. Grade 7, 52.3 points higher. And grade 8 at the middle school, 69.5 points higher. Algebra 1, there's the dip that I've been expecting. As those concepts become more difficult, obviously it's going to show a bigger impact on the state assessment. So we're about 21 points lower than the state average. Moving on to science. We test science at 5th grade, 8th grade, and again as the students take biology in the high school. So grade 5 in the elementaries, we are 36.7 points higher than the state average. Grade 8 at the middle school, we're 43.9 points higher. And our biology scores are 3.6 points higher. Moving on to social studies, we test one social studies area at the high school, that's government class. And we are about 7.8 points lower than the state average. So those are our assessment results from last year for both the end of course exam and the grade level exams. We are going to move on to discuss MSIP 5 and where we were with MSIP 5. You can see the 5 cycles of MSIP 5 that are listed there. This is the last year that MSIP 5 would have been in place if the state would have produced an APR for our school district. So that leads to the question, where are we going? This is where MSIP 5 was. There were 5 standards: academic, and subgroup achievement, college and career readiness, attendance, and graduation. All of those are performance standards, and our score was based 100% on these performance standards. 1920, just to review, we didn't give a state test, so state and federal accountability was not possible. In 2021, we did give the state test, and APR was not created because it wasn't appropriate to score school districts based on that data, but our state organization felt it was important to gather that data and to have those scores so that we had a baseline for where we were and how to move forward. So on to MSIP 6. The red box highlights where we are according to scores. It's a little confusing because 2021 data is being evaluated now. So that's where we are in evaluating our data. Data produced, formal accountability is waived. So moving on to this school year, 2021, right below the red box, we are in a transition to MSIP 6. Students will test in March and April to gather that data for the MSIP 6. And then we'll create a baseline, and the state will give districts transitional status. It would have been nice if we would have been able to have a year where we generated data, we looked at where we were according to MSIP 5, and then we look at how that correlates to MSIP 6 and what we're going to do to address some of the new standards and some of the differences between MSIP 5 and MSIP 6. We don't have that. So individually, we can take our data and apply it. In order to do that, the state has to define the specifics of MSIP 6. It's currently in process. I've attended a couple meetings in Jefferson City with some advisory committees on MSIP 6, and there's been great discussion on what's most appropriate for students in the state of Missouri. What worked with MSIP 5, what didn't work with MSIP 5, and how do we make those changes to make MSIP 6 better. Really great professionals in the room having those discussions. That's still in progress. MSIP 6 is going to be, what we do know is MSIP 6 is going to be based on two different standards. One is performance, which is what we're used to with the MSIP 5 system. That's going to be worth 70% of our score. And then we're going to have a continuous improvement standards, which is going to be roughly 30% of our score. Now, all of this is in draft form. These percentages could change. This is what was being proposed. The discussions are still occurring, so that these percentages are not set in stone. Once again, this is a draft. The performance standards are composed of achievement for status, which includes overall and some specific student groups. Achievement for growth, which again includes all students for an overall score and some individual student groups. There's a success ready component, a graduate rate, a follow-up component, and that total of 100% equals the 70% for this performance portion. Okay. If we move on to continuous improvement, which composes roughly 30% of our score, there's improvement planning for a total of 80%, which includes a plan, a response to the standards, and a survey. And then we have another success-ready component under continuous improvement for a total of 100% under the 30%. Our new accountability system of MSIP 6, they've said most of December and probably some in November, early 2022, we should get a preliminary guidance document. We're still waiting on that. There are a lot of wheels in motion and a lot of people contributing to this process. And so DESE wants to get it right, and they do want to get it out early in 2022, but they do want to make sure it's right when they get it out so they can minimize having to make edits. They plan on having a spring 2022 public hearing, and then following that public hearing with input from that, they will hopefully produce a final guide for the MSIP 6. I wanted to give you this preliminary information with the hopes that moving forward at board meetings, I could slowly introduce MSIP 6 rather than trying to shove it all in one meeting so that we could digest the little pieces of it rather than try to get through it all in one evening. So, at the end of our annual performance report review, we usually ask the question, what should we celebrate? We don't have an annual performance report review, but the question still remains, what should we celebrate? I think we've got a lot of things to celebrate here at St. Genevieve. Having students back, first and foremost, being able to feed our students. We need to celebrate each other because there's a lot of stress associated with what we've been through over the past several years. And our faculty and staff have done a fantastic job in supporting each other, and supporting our students. And lastly, we survived. We're still surviving. The hope is that at some point we will be able to turn a corner and return to some kind of normal, what we used to think of as the educational process. We need to take what we've been through and learn what we can. There's a lot of positives that have come out of it, whether it's virtual instruction, blended learning, providing students with what they need, making individual adjustments for students. But it sure would be nice to have a year where we felt like we were impacting kids in a positive way like we used to, without all these negative components having to be factored in. So, I think that's the last one. Do you have any questions for me? I know it's a lot of information. I feel like overall, our MAP scores and our end of course exams and our grade level exams, while down from what they normally are still pretty solid. We use this data to look at and see where holes might exist and where we may need to focus, but you have to remember this test was given last year, and grade level students have moved on to the next grade, and while we can share that data with them, they've already had a half a year of instruction under their belt. It leads me back to the NWEA test, giving that test 3 times a year, getting that data back real time, allowing that data to drive instruction, which positively impacts students. So I know a lot of our teachers have latched onto that and are using that data for the benefit of students, and I hope to continue that. So, you all have any questions for me? Well, I sure wish I could say yes to that. I will say, I think they are open to listening because they are aware of the limitations of that test. You know, they need that test for state and federal accountability purposes. And so looking at it from their view, I understand where they are. Looking at it from our view, with our feet on the ground in the classroom with those students, and how can we use that data to drive instruction, to positively impact students, to know where they are, to know the holes that they have. I don't know that you can fit all of that into one. It sure would be nice if we could use our NWEA data, correlate it to state data, and it would be able to be interchangeable. They're listening. They know it's out there. There's a lot of people using it, and I just hope they continue to have a conversation with school districts that are.
Our teachers still use this data to inform instruction decisions for the coming year. They can use the NWEA data we have also.
Yeah, and that's the problem that we have. The NWEA data they gave at the beginning of the year, they give at the middle of the year. They have that data immediately, and so there's no need. We used to wait on this data with bated breath. How did we do? How did we do? How did our district score? What did the grade levels score? Now it's not as pressing. It's important. I mean, it's how our district is scored by the state, and that data needs to be reported federally as well. But that real-time data from the NWEA test, which is correlated to the Missouri Learning Standards, so they're getting it back real-time, and They can even pull reports that say, these are the standards that the student needs to work on. So it's important data. I'm so glad that we got in on the front end of that consortium. Dr. Mercer was in on some of the presentations from some of those organizations. It's been a very positive experience from our end. There are some challenges. The test takes a long time. And for kindergartners and first graders and second graders, having to take time out of instruction to give that test, you have to remember the test is adaptive as well. If all students are going to get 50% of those questions wrong. And for some students that are used to achieving really at a high level, that's challenging for them because they're not going to get them all right. But as they get the questions right, the questions get harder, and it zeroes in on really what they know and at what level they are. It's not a grade level specific test. You could be taking the test as a 6th grader and go up to an 8th grade level question because you're just that advanced. Or it could take you down to a 5th grade or a 4th grade level question because it's really identifying what your level is.
Dr. Taylor, does what the teachers are seeing 3 times a year on the NWEA correlate with the disaggregated data that they receive from the math test?
So that's a great question, and that's what NWEA as an organization has to show the state of Missouri, that a proficient score on this score on the NWEA test correlates to a proficient score on the state test.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do. NWEA is going to say absolutely does, because they've got statisticians looking at their data and making the correlation. One of the bonuses for going with the NWEA organization is they've already done this in other states. They've already given the test and correlated it to the state test in other states. So that was a huge selling point for us. We've done it in another state already. They are using that data for state level purposes. So currently, did I answer your question?
Well, yeah, and I didn't even know if the teachers had had time to even really study their disaggregated data to see how it compares. How long have they had this data?
This data's been out for a while.
Okay.
I've been holding off with the hopes that we would get this APR and SIP 6 information, and I would be able to present it. Couldn't hold off anymore.
Right.
I needed to get it out there. So it's been out for a couple months.
So those scores that show more opportunity, like alpha, the NWEA has shown that already, and we're making adaptations that
I am not sure how much that has been. High school's on a year 1 level. They jumped on at the end of last year with NWEA. We did a little training session. So this is their first year that they've done it. I'm not, Dr. Boyd, could you speak to that?
So they just got a baseline back in the fall, and so now in the winter, they actually just took it when we came back from break. And so now they're in the process of going through and kind of taking a look at the data and taking a look at where they were at the beginning of the year and how much growth they've seen from their kids now. And so I think that piece is going to be very interesting for them as they start to present things like that. At the high school, this is, as Dr. Taylor said, this is the first year that we've really gotten in and rolled our sleeves and started taking a look at it. So, there's definitely some growing pains, learning the reports and learning how to get kids into the system and all of those things that the other buildings have already been there and they've already done that. We're just learning the process. And so, it's available for algebra, it's available for biology, it's available for English. One thing is not available currently right now for American government. So, my folks are and my study teachers are hoping that they come out soon because they really like looking at data. They really a huge motivator for those guys working down there, and so they're really learning. They're seeing what the other departments are able to take a look at, and they want to see actions on it. So they're hoping to be able to do that. I actually sat in Mr. White's math class as he was giving the NWEA. It's really interesting to see how it works and how it plays out, because the amount of time that it takes for some students is completely different than the amount of time that it takes other students. Some students are finishing rather quickly, while other students are there working the entire hour because it just takes them so long to
That's a really, really good question. And I bet
And that's another key piece of information. If COVID wouldn't interrupt our testing process, we would have a significant line of data. A sixth grade student who's taken the test for 3 years will go in ninth grade with all of that data following them. So as soon as their name and teacher are loaded into the system at the high school level, that teacher has access to how they scored those prior 3 years, where they are, where they've struggled. That's a huge amount of data that's thrown into that report, and the teacher can print out Missouri learning standards. They're specific to that student that they need or that they're strong at. And that I'm really excited about this. I don't know if you can tell or not, but that goes to grouping students. You can group students who are similar in the challenges that they face with their subject area, or you can group students different and put a strong student, medium student, and struggling student in the same group. And now you've got student interaction, learning the content. I'm very excited.
And all the three in your class. So you can look at your first hour out of class and you can trend of that and maybe a little more at prior to you, and you can divide that look at it as a whole through that entire class.
So work in progress. Hopefully we can get some more NWEA training on looking at the reports and how to look at them and how to read them in the best way, the most efficient way. It's very exciting.
And I'll just add, we believe in it so much that we have, we're going to use part of our ESSER 3 funds from the federal government to pay the 5-year membership. So we're going to use the federal funds to fund that program. We thought it was a great way to gather data and track the learning of our students. So.
Sounds like
In board docs?
Well, I can give you access.
Are you in the public session? I will have to check that out, though. Okay. Before we go to the next item, typically this month we talk about the MSBA board member appreciation dates because they're typically in February. This year, MSBA has pushed back board member appreciation to March 6th through 12th. But I noticed our elementaries brought some gifts, so I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Zusman and Mrs. Geck if they want to chat about what they brought.
Well, our third grade teachers, they have it built in their curriculum to write letters to the board members in January. So they're the ones that spurred us to bring the letters to you. We hope that you enjoy the letters and the candy. We know that you put a lot of time in to being on the board, and we know that each and every one of you come to visit schools and find out what's going on, and you put a lot of heart into it, so we appreciate you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
These are some of the best gifts all year.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody can get a better gift. This and the
No.
principal. Here's two, Dr.
The next item in your board packet, you have some safety reports. Those are available on board docs for people to see. And again, I want to point out before I turn it back over to Mr. Bova, we have a couple of high school students here in attendance. We really appreciate seeing students here, so I wanted to thank them for coming. And they just smile so sweet. All right, Mr. Bova, back to you.
I did want to go back to the consent agenda. On Friday, some board members came in and congratulated the recipient or the nominee, I guess, for the John T. Belcher Scholarship, which was Thomas O'Brien. We did ask him to come tonight. I believe he has a basketball game.
Mhm.
So congratulations to him again. He was very thankful. Next on the agenda, we have unfinished business, the instructional program presentation for 4th grade.
Yes. Here we go. You're going to love this one.
Welcome. Come speak and paint out the fabulous 4th grade. Here are the featured teachers in 4th grade. Math in 4th grade is a review for previously taught skills but taken to a deeper level. On this slide, you can see the topics covered in the first semester. Second semester of 4th grade math introduces many new skills. The biggest portion of second semester is all about the fractions, and more fractions. In 4th grade science, we cover the topics listed using collaborative teams and hands-on activities. In 4th grade reading, we cover a variety of fiction reading skills using small groups, guided reading groups, and book clubs. In writing, we focus on the personal narrative unit and language lessons with our writing unit. During the second semester of reading, we focus mostly on nonfiction reading skills. In writing, we compose informational and opinion writings, with again incorporating language skills. Fourth grade social studies covers a variety of topics, starting with the beginning of civilization through the revolutionary period of 1789. Both schools have incorporated an intervention block this year to reach out to not only at-risk students, but also providing enrichment. We hope you enjoyed our virtual trip through 4th grade.
All right. Next on the agenda is the 2021-2022 reopening plan.
Yes, we have a few updates. As you see over here on the right, where it says per the CDC, this update is going throughout the plan. Basically, the new guidelines say students, teachers, and staff who test positive for COVID-19 and never develop symptoms should isolate and not come to school work for at least 5 days. If they continue to remain asymptomatic, they can end isolation and return to school work after at least 5 days, but should continue to wear a well-fitting mask around others until day 10. If they are unable to wear a mask when around others, they should not come to school work for the full 10 days. If they develop symptoms after testing positive, the 5-day isolation period should start over. Students who test positive for COVID-19 will be provided virtual instruction for the identified period. There's also an update from MISHA which follows the new CDC guidelines. MISHA has also updated its return to play form. For parents with athletes who test positive, they have to go see a doctor and have this form filled out and turned into the school before their child can start participating in sports again. That has been the case all along. We did, in the new updates, put the link to the form, and that link will be active when you look at the plan on our website. The other thing that I wanted to address is we've received some questions about our dashboard is no longer there. With Missouri Attorney General's letter that came out on December 9th, changing quarantine practices for our local health department and Department of Health and Senior Services. They are no longer tracking quarantines. They're encouraging people to stay home, but that really isn't a quarantine. So that information was no longer relevant. The other thing that happened with the 5 days you stay at home and 5 days you can come with a mask on, it now becomes more personally identifiable. For example, last week we had 3 positive cases. And had that information been on our dashboard, let's say one of those cases would have been in the middle school. You know, as a student, I would notice that one of my peers is gone for an extended period of time, and then when he or she came back, that student wore a mask for 5 days. That would be an indicator to a student and or their parent that that child was positive. Could be the same thing for a staff member. So we had great concerns about putting that information on our website because it was going to become personally identifiable when we had low numbers. So what we did do, or what we're going to do tomorrow, Bailey, is we're going to provide the link to the St. Genevieve Health Department's webpage where they track positive cases in our community. That's the information that we could provide and not put out personally identifiable information. And in case you're curious, right now we have 7 positive cases within the district. That's the most current number. So these are the updates to the plan that I ask you to approve.
Motion to approve the update for the 2021-22 curriculum plan and the usage for space coverage for all students, visitors, and the school district there.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have new business, the proposed calendar for the 2022-2023 school year.
What I have for you tonight is the draft copy. Let me enlarge this. Let me make this go up. Okay. So basically what this draft copy is a copy of the 2021-22 calendar. I'll go through it with you. And the calendar committee met last week. They made a few changes, and I'll go over those minor changes as we go through the entire calendar. So this is just a review tonight. We have the calendar out to all employees for review and comment until Monday, January 31st. When that survey closes, Bailey and I and Dr. Taylor will work together to create a summary for the calendar committee and take all of the comments back. They will meet again before our next board meeting and put together a final draft for all of you to review and vote upon at the February board meeting. So with this calendar, the mission dead period for activities, which you approved at the August board meeting, will be July 30th through August 7th. New teacher PD days will be on August 9th, 10th, and 11th. New student registrations will begin in all 4 of our buildings on August 8th. That is a little bit of a change. We used to identify registration periods for the elementaries and then separate ones for the middle school, high school. But with the middle school and high school, their registrations are primarily online, and the elementaries, they do all of their registration paperwork online. Unless it's a new student. New students, we need to come in and fill out all of the paperwork. What the calendar committee did put on here were the dates. We identified the high school grade 9 orientation program and the middle school grade 6 orientation program. Those are actual programs where students come in, tour the buildings, get a little snapshot of what life's like in the middle school or high school. PD days for all employees on August 15th and 16th. Teacher work day on the 17th with elementary, pre-K, and kindergarten open house that night. Teacher PD day on the 18th with grades 1 through 5 open house at both of our elementaries that night. First day of school on August 22nd. Open house at the middle school on the 25th and the high school on the 31st. September 2nd, which is a Friday. It's the Friday before Labor Day. Let me scroll down a little bit here. will be a PD day. Here we go. A PD day, September 5th is the Labor Day holiday, and homecoming will be early this year. It is set for September 16th against Fredericktown. October 21st would be mid-semester grade check. October 27th would be an early dismissal at 1 p.m. with parent-teacher conferences that evening, and no school on October 28th. November 11th will be our Veterans Day holiday, and thankfully it's on a Friday, so you get a 3-day weekend there. Early dismissal on the 23rd at 1 p.m. for the Thanksgiving holiday. Thanksgiving's on the 24th, no school on the 25th. December 21st would be our early dismissal at 1 p.m. for Christmas break. Christmas break would continue for 2 weeks. Students would return and staff would return on Thursday, January 5th. No school on January 16th, Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. No school on February 17th for Teacher PD Day. This is the River PD event that we're getting ready to go to next month. No school on February 20th, President's Day holiday. No school on March 10th and 13th. The 13th is an additional PD day. This year and the prior year, we've added 2 professional development days for all employees. The committee decided to go ahead and put 1 into this calendar and hopefully avoid having to do that next year. Easter is late next year, so early dismissal at 1 p.m. for Easter break will be on April 19th. We'll be off school April 20th, 21st, 24th, and return on Tuesday, April 25th. Last day of school would be an early dismissal at 1 p.m. on May 19th, and that's tentative pending no inclement weather days. Graduation is set for May 20th at 8 p.m. And then the rest of it, you see our 5 scheduled makeup days down at the bottom. This calendar, the state required minimum attendance hours of 1,044. This proposed calendar is 1,105 hours. 1,101.5 hours. So again, this is the first draft. We'll take the survey results and bring you a final draft at our next meeting. Any questions on this calendar or suggestions that you'd like us to look at? Do what? Just email it to me. Yes, please. All right. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda is the addition of a Deputy Superintendent of Schools position for the 2022-2023 school year.
In my presentation, I linked the job description. It's also on board docs. But I have a prepared statement that I'll read now. After much contemplation and discussion with Jason, my husband, I've made the decision to retire and will be submitting my letter to the board during the executive closed session meeting tonight with an effective date of June 30th, 2023, so a year and a half from now. This decision is primarily based on my need to be able to be there for Jason, our 4 children, our parents, and now our beautiful granddaughter. St. John 2 has been an integral part of my life for 41 years. My journey started at the age of 5 in kindergarten with Mrs. Bonnie Zerwig. I was blessed with amazing teachers and support staff throughout my academic career who helped guide me to find my calling in life. Some of these special people included Mr. Bruce Sunblad, Mrs. Dolores Roth, Mr. Terry McDaniel, Mrs. Kay Stiegel, Dr. Joan Wilson, Mr. Robert Pingle, and many, many more. I could go on and on. I was also very fortunate to have a high school principal who saw potential in me. Throughout his career at St. Genevieve, Mr. Michael Stewart hired and promoted me at least 9 different times. from an assistant in the cafeteria while I was in middle school and high school, to a cooperative office education student in the high school office my senior year, to a part-time secretary during the summer while I was in college, then to a full-time secretary registrar in the high school guidance office when I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. And on to a special education teacher's aide when I got my degree, a middle school business teacher, a high school business teacher, a middle school assistant principal and athletic director, and the middle school principal. I never intended to leave the classroom once I started teaching, but with Mr. Stewart's encouragement and support, I took the classes, earned the degree, and found myself in administration. I was also blessed to work with Dr. Becky Freelix, who made the decision to obtain her degree and encouraged, but she really strong-armed me and pulled me along to join the same cohort and work on mine. But the most influential person throughout my professional career and journey at St. Genevieve has been my husband, Jason. Everything that I did and accomplished here is a tribute to his support. He encouraged me every time I talked about returning to school to earn another degree. He supported me when I coached volleyball, traveled with my FBLA students, supervised events after school, and through every transition I made in this district. Without his support and that of our parents and our children, I am not sure where I'd be today. I am extremely proud and humbled to have been a part of this great school district and to have had a hand in the progress that we've made throughout my employment. I was always most proud to share with others that our board members make decisions that are in the best interests of kids. I am excited to continue this focus throughout my last year and a half with the district and look forward to watching it continue into the future. I want to personally thank these board members and those who hired supported me in the past. I sincerely thank all of you for allowing me to be a part of the St. Gen R2 family. I was truly encouraged and supported in growing and becoming a much better educator and leader throughout my life. So, what does this mean for the future of this great district? To ensure a seamless transition to a new superintendent, I have discussed and am now formally requesting that the board create a deputy superintendent position for 1 year. The purpose of the deputy superintendent position will be to provide an effective training and transition period. This person will work closely with me, other area superintendents, and state organizations to learn the various roles and responsibilities of the superintendent position. The deputy superintendent position will also manage all aspects of the April 5th bond issue if, or when, let's be positive, it passes, to ensure the district's new superintendent is prepared to effectively manage bond issues and new construction moving forward. Throughout the training and transition period, the deputy superintendent will, over time, assume the responsibilities of the superintendent in order to ensure there's a seamless transition. The deputy superintendent will serve as superintendent in the absence of the superintendent, provide leadership and direction in all departments to ensure alignment and attainment of the district's comprehensive school improvement goals and strategies, represent the superintendent as appropriate at official school and community functions, communicate with the school board and the community regarding district programs, ensure compliance with state and federal regulations, administer the school district's budget, provide effective administration of all schools and departments, and provide educational leadership throughout the school system and community. Some of you may be wondering why a deputy superintendent position is necessary. Nationwide, statewide, and locally, the landscape of public education has changed drastically over the last several years, and St. Gen R2 has several fronts where we must direct focus, some of which include the April 5th bond issue, if passed, the district's ongoing planning for and response to COVID, navigating the district's financial positioning given the uncertainty of Wholesome's protested taxes, the possibility of changes to state legislation regarding public education, and the large number of retirements that have taken place in the district office within the last year and a half. The deputy superintendent offers an opportunity for us to plan proactively for the future of this district, and it is an approach that other districts and surrounding communities are also implementing in order to ensure a seamless transition for district leadership. Thank you for considering this plan, and I look forward to having the opportunity to form this partnership for the future of this great district. I made it through.
I know we've got a year and a half to throw kudos to you, but think I speak for the 7 of us that we hate to hear it, but we certainly understand it.
Family first. That's what we always preach, and my family needs me. So,
It hasn't been the easiest of previous 4 years,
no, it has not.
but thank you for your leadership.
You're welcome. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the positive comment. I used to teach school, folks.
Yes. Yes.
And Mr. Sunblad and I were both of our teachers.
Yes.
All together.
It was a life-changing 6th grade experience, having both of them the same year. And I was fortunate enough, I had Bruce Sunblad twice. I had him in 4th grade and 6th grade. So,
Questions for Dr. Fleeg or Dr. Taylor?
I did want to point out, because I have received some questions, we have a lot of needs that we need to address with learning and kids. Those, we're discussing those. We have lists, and we're going to continue discussing those and find the best way forward to help our kids and our staff. This position is a 1-year position. Those other positions that we're talking about adding, those are long-term positions. We have to make sure that they can be sustained. Salaries, benefits, classroom supplies, classroom space, really. Some of it we're not sure where we're going to put them because we're out of space in some of our buildings. But this is a 1-year proposal. And I think with everything that has gone on, as Mr. Bova pointed out, the past 4 years, I think this is the right move to ensure this district is on the right path.
I certainly see the value in this position as we transition, and you mentioned it here also, but when I get out in the buildings, particularly the elementaries, I hear a need for some additional consideration of positions. I hope those are some of the ones that will be considered.
That is correct. This board has added, over the past 2 years, 3 elementary teaching positions, 3 or 4 between the 2 buildings. Some of those we've added. We know we have to address learning loss. We added them to reduce class sizes at classes that we know we have more struggling students. But the thought process with those, we know we also have people in the future who are retiring. So we're going to be able to absorb some of those moving forward. Some of the things that we're discussing are permanent solutions to problems that we've been looking at for a few years now. And so there'll be long-term solutions that will stay in place.
Thank you.
This isn't gonna slide body or anything.
No, not at all. No, and I know there may be some question, with the uncertainty of Wholesome. Wholesome is paying a portion of their taxes, so that is generating a little bit more tax money, but not a lot. But you also have to remember we have the COVID money from the federal government. We have ESSER 2, we have ESSER 3 funds that we're bringing in. So that's why financially we can still address the protested taxes, but also support this position and some of those others that we need.
I think in light of all the federal funds coming in, the bond issue, and just the immense amount of additional rules and regulations that have been made, it's something we should have done, and I want to do. Just want to make sure we're doing the same thing in the classrooms as needed.
Yes.
The list that you read off is a very good reason to pass this. Plus, the legislature is changing things all the time. And nobody knows what's going to happen this year.
Yes. This year? My first year. Well, we don't want to talk about my first year. Okay. I don't know. It would have been great to be a deputy superintendent when in Dr. Lindsay's last year, because I was still doing my job as assistant. I was trying to learn from him as much as I could, but you still have to do that full-time job. You know, when I talked about the changes in district office just in the year and a half, we've just had so many people retire. We have a new finance coordinator. We have a new payroll clerk. We have a new admin assistant. We're going to have a new director of student services because Dr. Green is retiring, and I wish her well. You know, and there's actually a couple other people in district office that could retire at any time. So there's a lot of transition and changes and learning that's going to have to take place next year with a lot of people. And then if the $20 million bond issue passes, that's just another layer. But, you know, I want to be honest. I know the perception is there that some of those other things are going to be slighted. That is not our intention at all. This is just a way to make sure whoever follows me is much more prepared than I ever was. And that's not Dr. Lindsay did a phenomenal job. He was hard to follow. He was really good because, you know, we've been superintendent forever, and he's still here. Whenever I call and pick up the phone, he's there giving advice and helping. But, you know, I said surrounding school districts are doing it. Perryville has a deputy. I think they're interviewing tonight the last 5 candidates. And then Jefferson R7 announced their deputy superintendent will be next year. I think they made that announcement today. Or was it over the weekend? It was over the weekend. It's their high school principal, David Haug. So he's a good guy.
Name's going to be
Deputy superintendent, correct. Yes, he will.
Any other questions for Dr. Lee or Dr.
Make a motion to approve the addition of the schools, position for the 2022 school year. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call. David Bova, yes. Eric Klausler?
Yes.
Geraldine Diesel?
Yes.
James Kirshner? Martha Riesinger? Richard Rudloff?
Yes.
Terrence McDaniel?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next we have the adjournment to executive session. Mr. McDaniel.
I motion that the Board of Education adjourn to a closed meeting with closed record and closed vote. So after a short break, for the purpose of discussing and voting upon the following items of business: hiring, firing, disciplining, and promoting particular employees, scholastic probation, expulsion, or evaluation of identifiable individuals, and individually identifiable individual record, performance ratings, or record pertaining to employees or applicants for employment, except that this exemption shall not apply to the names, positions, salaries, and lengths of service of officers and employees of public agencies once they are employed as such, and the name of private sources donating or contributing to money to the salary of the chancellor or president at all public colleges and universities in the state of Missouri, and the amount of money contributed by that source. Roll call: David Holman,
Yes.
Eric Bosler, Gerald Diesel, James Kirchner, Martha Riesinger, Richard Rudolph,
Yes.
Terrence McDaniel, yes. Motion carried 7-0.